Interview Rob Legato. Mark.
What comes to mind, Technicolor is the history of Technicolor is the history of color, I guess, for motion pictures. And so then, it's my first memory of color pictures were some of the older ones and things that as soon as we got a color TV, I got to see Wizard of Oz the way it was intended. And it was like mind-blowing, that kind of color. And then I could never understand how come that color wasn't reproduced in films that I was seeing in modern day. It didn't look quite the same. So it was always an impression that those older films, there's something about the way the color worked that was fascinating and it left an imprint on me. In fact, I studied Technicolor because I saw something at the Smithsonian about Technicolor and how they would apply the three different colors together and then the transparency would become color, and I was like, oh, this is amazing. So I studied up a bit on that, and then so I knew about two-strip Technicolor and three-strip in a cursory way just from reading, and Martin Scorsese asked me that he would like to reproduce two-strip Technicolor and three-strip Technicolor, and I didn't know anybody who actually knew what those terms were really, but he did, and that was like it's like I have to get this job, I have to do this, and then I got a chance to interview some of the people who were around when they actually did the dye transfer stuff, and to give me tips on how to reproduce it and all that sort of stuff, and it was just too much fun. I had a ball doing it. Pretty much in all the films I work on, I'm sort of come from more the practical side of visual effects. I actually started as a DP and studied cinematography in school, so my bias is always photographing things that are real and sort of being inspired by the cleverness of our forefathers who invented all these things, which I used a lot in actual Aviator as well. And so for Hugo, it feels like, especially in a Marty movie, it feels like if you're depicting that time frame, to use as many techniques as you can that pay homage to that or make or force you into filming it in a way that reminds you of that time period is very desirable. So for the most part, because we're recreating what a person could recreate in 1902, a stone cold genius, by the way, Georges Méliès. You get so inspired by the cleverness of the technique that you feel obligated to film it that way and not use the ease of a computer to get you there. Although we use a lot of computer stuff, for the most part, we designed shots that could have been photographed in that manner and designed tricks and sequences and visual gags and things like that that felt like it could have been done at that particular time. And it was very fulfilling because it's like, again, going back to our forefathers, in this case Marty, and his genius of staging and recreating that moment using modern technology to not look like you used modern technology to do it. It just takes a little bit of study, a little bit of cleverness. That's hence one of the reasons why I was so fascinated by Technicolor. The genius of being able to take three pieces of black and white film, put them together, and use a printing process to make full color out of literally black and white film was just a genius work. For me, what I like about working with Technicolor is, besides the history of the company that is very inspiring, just even walking through the door and looking at the great pictures and the cameras and all the stuff is just that there's an inspiration of history, of tradition, is using essentially state-of-the-art equipment to just tell stories in a very artistic and film collaborative way. And there's something about the history of it, something about the tradition of not shying away from a difficult assignment like when we did Aviator and now trying to reproduce digitally three-strip Technicolor and two-strip Technicolor. Even things we're doing now with different ways of conforming the movie and getting all the visual effects to look exactly the way we want them to look. For Jungle Book, I can't say too much about it because we're in the process of doing it. What I can say is that the work in it is just remarkable. I've done this for a long time and I haven't seen things that look quite like this, rendered by a computer to look like it's perfectly photoreal, and we go to great pains to actually lessen the graphic nature of the shots to look like it can be actually photographed. And what emerges from it is the story just kind of pulls out of it. So you don't go and go, look how wonderful that sky is in that shot and how fanciful, and you don't believe the scenario in. Here you sort of believe the scenario in because it looks like it could have been conventionally photographed, but using the absolute, literally state-of-the-art, to the moment technology to make it look like you just went out in the jungle and shot a film with talking animals. The crux of all movie making is the art of cinema, the art of telling a story using all the various tools that all combine together to make it not look like all these individual things, disparate items put together, but create one art form. And technology has allowed us to be able to seamlessly, if you are artistic, seamlessly put these things together and it can be misused quite a bit, because if you don't know what you're doing, it's like I can sit down at a piano and bang on it and it won't sound like music, but an artist could sit down at the same piano and play a Gershwin tune or compose one or create one. So it's really not about the thing, the equipment, it's about the person who's doing it. And what's also great about working in Technicolor with Steve Scott is that he's an artist who understands the art portion of what you're trying to do and make sure it doesn't get in the way of the storytelling or filmmaking. So when we sit in a bay with him, he really gets what you're trying to achieve and has the technical know-how and skill to be able to pull it off instantly and make it fun, because you could do it. He said, well, let's try this, and that looks cool. Well, let's work on top of this, let's add to that, and we'll try this other thing. And yet we're all trying to achieve the same end. And so the collaboration of that is so easy and straightforward. They're not trying to tell me how we used to do it. It's how do you want to do it, and how can we help you achieve your end. And the fact that it's so easy to do makes you want to do more and further the art form even greater. So the fun part for somebody like me is to have an idea that doesn't get shied away because, oh, it's too difficult or we've never done it before, but embraced and enjoyed. And it's the history of the company as well. That's how it started, and that's how it's progressing into the next generations. So it's not surprising at all that Technicolor is on the forefront of these other emerging technologies to enhance the cinema process, because that's their history, that's what they've always done. They've always been the leader of that particular type of thing. And doing something that was very difficult in its day, to force something into being which has this enormous benefit for the rest of the filmmaking community. And now you go into the next thing, which is high dynamic range photography and VR and all those various other things, these adjuncts to the filmmaking process that add or create new technologies or new venues for viewing particular material. So there's no surprise that a company that its primary goal was to advance technology should be the one that's also leading technology in the future. That's part of the DNA of being in the same building, But at the end of the day, the technology all washes away, and all that's left is the art of storytelling, the art of cinema. And that part is the really exciting part about this day and age of doing it. But it's still an homage back in the day when they used to be able to practically do all these things that we can now recreate and do with computers and software and stuff like that. I would have to say thanks for the first 100 years, and I can't wait for the second 100 years.